Okay.
Okay. And we're live. Okay. Welcome back to The Future of. I am your host, Jonathon Narvey. And today I am talking with Joan Melendez, the president and founder of Xcelrate UDI. And we're going to be talking about the future of healthcare. I'm excited to talk about this because Joan is just an expert in her field for many, many years. And you know what? I'm going to just mess up the introduction and not do you justice. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Why are you the expert about healthcare in the U.S.?
Thank you so much for having me today, Jonathan. I'm Joan Melendez from Xcelrate UDI, and I am an expert for medical device tracking and implantable devices in particular in the operating room area in healthcare. I started this many years ago because I saw a failure in the healthcare system where patients were getting injured or dying because of implantable devices. So I saw a need that not only in the healthcare space, but in our government space, where we really needed to understand a lot more about unique device identifiers and medical devices and tracking of these implants.
So thank you very much for that. And I have to say, and full disclosure, Joan and I work together, so there's that. So as I've come to learn more about Xcelrate UDI and the work you do and your team does, I have to say that the more I've learned, the more horrified I am at just the state of healthcare in the U.S., which, you know, it's the most advanced economy in the world. There's technology everywhere you look, and yet maybe you can identify, you know, maybe go a little bit deeper into the problem that Xcelrate UDI in particular is solving. Because yeah, I think a lot of people just won't realize this is the case. Go ahead.
I mean, it's alarming, the state that we really are. I just got an email just a few minutes ago how they're really tracking, doing traceability of food from farm to table in the FDA. But when it comes to a medical device, something that's implanted, that is authorized to be used in the United States, and sometimes on novel, people are learning that word, novel, a new use for a device. So they don't go through the full FDA vetting process because they're basing that technology on a previous submission that they have. So for example, a Band-Aid. One company had Band-Aids, and they had some medication on that Band-Aid that when they put it on the wound, that it was, closing up the wound. So they saw that they could possibly use that internally and put that on a bone. And now it's an implantable device, but they didn't have to go through any of the rigors of medical device authorization because they were able to base it on that previous certification. So with that, it introduces a lot of patient safety issues. Patients die, unfortunately, as a result of bad medical devices. And, they save lives at the same time, but we really need to understand when we're harming patients or when patients are being harmed and being able to track that. So we saw that void. We saw that it's not communicated when there's a recalled item. It can still be being used in patients for weeks, months, unfortunately, even years after they've been recalled because the communication didn't get from the manufacturer to the hospital. It goes through the FDA, but the FDA is very behind.
Right.
And now with COVID, we see additional problems because of the fact that the FDA has multiple data sets, and whenever they have those authorizations for what's called an emergency use authorization, they're not tracked again the same way as these new novel ones. So we have different databases when they have been recalled or have harmed a patient.
Right. So, and the result is we've got, tens of thousands of Americans who, well, have died because of recalled items that should not have gone inside them, but, and then, or maybe there were people who were alerted to the recall after, but maybe they died in surgery meant to retrieve or replace the implant that went in. Surgery is not something you want to get into in any case, but if you have to, it's not good to go through it multiple times for the same thing. And then, so in addition to the loss of life, the injury, loss of quality of life, of course, there's economic damage in the billions. So,
not to mention the stress that you're putting that staff under in the hospital. Nurses and doctors just want to do the right thing. So they rely on the medical manufacturers to providing them the information, and partnering with the FDA. There are a lot of manufacturers who do a great job, who we're starting to work with more, so that how can we communicate quicker when there is an injury in the operating room with the device? Because right now the reporting structure called MOD or MDR is very time consuming. So most people go, I'm not doing it. So these adverse events are underreported.
So this is, a huge problem, a huge challenge for, not just healthcare, but the people, as you say, who are there and who just want to, do their job, help people live longer, better quality lives. And so, that is really the state of, where healthcare is at right now. I feel like it's sort of, we've integrated technology, but now we need to ensure that I don't know if it's a technology solution or a bureaucratic solution, but I think what you've talked about before in your article, you were recently featured in an interview on the 5 things we must do to improve the U.S. healthcare system, and you talked a bit about patient advocacy, and also the, you've been an advocate for patients for all of your career, and
my life, started early.
So, and I think you had some interesting things to say about where we go from here. So if we've dwelled a little bit on, the negative of the present and the challenges, I really want to talk about the future of healthcare. So where things could be headed, assuming things come together from a patient advocacy standpoint, the technology standpoint, what's the good news coming up?
The great news is, people are really starting to understand. It's all about how do you understand? How do you know that there's a problem, right? You have to start talking about it. So we have big ears and we listen to a lot of nurses, and we ended up developing an application in the operating room that's point of care. All they have to do is grab that medical device barcode. I just happen to have some right here. And all they do is scan the barcodes, and then it parses all that data into their electronic health record, including required fields that hit what's called the good ID, and bringing back 13 data elements about MRI safety. So if a patient has to have, it has an implant, it has metal in it, for example, they come in, a couple of years later or a couple of weeks later and need an MRI, we're able to prevent that patient from having that MRI, because we are able to already tell, just by reporting that patient has an implant that has metal in it. And the great thing is we're partnering with another company called Track My Solutions, which, after the nurse scans the medical device, we then feed that information over to Track My Solution so that patient has real-time information about their implants. We're also attaching patient education information to that. So it's really empowering that patient to be more, proactive in their healthcare. So one of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine who has to go in for knee surgery. I'm like, so the system that the doctor is using on you, tell me about it. Is he using the system because it's something that he's familiar with, or does he understand that you're an athlete and you need to be able to have a system implanted that's going to actually help with your, to maintain your quality of life? So it's that education and keeping informed with the patients. We've taken it a step further too, even with the manufacturers, where we've developed a portal for them called UDI Clearinghouse, so that we can, again, be proactive and be able to communicate information about medical devices and implantables, including biologics, because we want anything that's implanted in the body or anything that's used on the body. We really need to be able to track it. I equate it to a VIN. You know what a VIN is, right? Your vehicle identification number on your car. But if you have an implant, do you know what your UDI is?
Yeah.
So it's just keeping people informed.
That's right. And I think this is something that it's the part of having a modern healthcare system that you kind of, in the same way that, you go to a supermarket and you just assume everything in there is safe and isn't going to kill you.
Right.
So, when we're talking about the great advances that we see coming down the line, whether it's implants or, your pacemaker, a knee replacement, or, something a bit more sci-fi that is in development, like you're looking at, say, exoskeletons to help people who are paraplegics to walk, or Elon Musk's Neuralink implant. I don't know if you saw something about that. So how do you, I don't know, would you have some guidance, some advice for these, I guess, the scientists who are working on the bleeding edge of developing these advances that will go either into our bodies or outside our bodies, or connected to us somehow, maybe inside of our brains? How do you think about that, like things that they need to keep in mind as they're building?
It's all about communication, really, even with that, because they want to be able to know how that product is working in the field. And having, in technology and IT, we use Scrum methodology. And it's the ability to quickly test and develop, but keeping everything in a nice tight cycle so that you're able to improve the products that you're developing. So for me, and that's one thing that we've done with our application is we listen. We want to make sure that we're researching so we know what's needed. And then we're listening to our customers, we're listening to peers, so that we can make sure that we're developing the best application. And I think scientists need to do the same thing with medical devices.
That's very interesting. And I think at the same time that we're talking about safety in medical devices that they're building right now and into the future, something attached when we think about high technology in healthcare and a modern healthcare system, we think big dollars. There's a cost attached to these things, and the U.S. healthcare is sort of notorious for getting perhaps diminishing returns for the amount of money that goes into it. I'm curious about maybe you could offer a little bit more perspective on how either Xcelrate UDI's solution or other advances you're seeing, other ways of running healthcare can lead to maybe better bang for the buck. Go ahead.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, with our application, we see that every day. I mean, we're able to capture millions of dollars in lost revenue. I just did an audit for a facility. This is not that big. It only has 13 operating rooms, and we recovered 27 million in lost charges. And those were just charges that, because they weren't scanning, they were missing. And you know, when you're using a system, let's say a knee surgery, you have screws sometimes, you have cement sometimes, and those things are costly. So if you're not billing for all the items within the case that you're using, you know, you lose millions of dollars. And so what ends up happening, in my opinion, is you end up charging everything else because you're losing money continually. So why am I bleeding? Because, you know, helping your nurses so that they are able to focus on the patient, which is our focus, you know, in less than, you know, a few seconds, you scan that barcode, it puts all the information into the healthcare record. So we have complete transparency of what was used, and we're able to bill for that item at the time of service. So we have everything nice and tidy in a bow, with a bow on top, you know. So that's what they really need to do, is to minimize their losses. And technology helps with that, you know.
Right. Well, yeah, it's such a boon to you know, to healthcare providers to be able to, you know, deliver you know, this top-notch healthcare at, you know, at a cost we can all afford without bankrupting the country. And then, you know, in terms of the benefits to you know, ordinary people who, you know, it's not just, by the way, you know, if you're 65, or, you know, and you've got a worn out hip or a knee, and, you know, there's a lot of young people with implants. I was looking at this article. 3 more women died from cancer linked to allergens recalled breast implants, FDA says. So, and if I'm not mistaken, we're talking, there have been millions of recalls just of breast implants.
Just of Allergan. So there were over 4 million breast implants that were recalled. And unfortunately, Allergan lost track of 50 or plus thousand women. So how does that happen? You know, it's the implants should, when you use an implant, somebody besides just that hospital needs to know what you had implanted. Because if it's something that's going to stay in your body greater than 10 years and you're not going back to that hospital, what's happening to that record? Right. You know what I mean? Your records are getting archived after a few years, and 10 years, they don't have to keep them anymore.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah. So it's about, yeah, one has to think about what, you know, these medical improvements and implants that we're putting in. You know, it's not just a one-time, it's good when you put it in. No, these things have, you know, you have to think of it over the lifetime of the implant, and also your lifetime, your own time scale where you're at in life. So yeah, I think that we've really I think we've very much covered, you know, the challenge and the solutions that can be offered with you know, a better way of tracking these things. I think one observation I have from working with you is just, you know, how much the learning that that I got from understanding Xcelrate UDI. I'm just amazed that the healthcare industry is not already, well, you know, was not already, you know, more linked up and, you know, sharing the information that and getting, you know, we're so data driven in our other modes of life. So I don't know if you have thoughts about. I guess nothing would surprise you because you've spent your career in this, so you knew exactly where things were at.
Yes. And I mean, it's alarming. I mean, if we really go back to this Allergan, 2011, why did these 3 additional women have to die?
Right.
That went, you know, on the market at 2011 is when the recall started. Right. So, you know, it's quite a, yeah, it's amazing what healthcare, where we are in healthcare today, and especially in the US.
Yeah.
The data is not there. We're working with one of the largest manufacturers right now because they're like, oh my God, you could give us data. You can give us usage data. You can give us waste data. You can give us when something isn't working. We want that data, but we can't get that data from the hospitals.
Right. And yeah, so having the data at, the data, the technology, the physical technology that goes into us, and the rules and regulations around it, there's got to be, a process, and, I guess the people in charge have to be constantly monitoring for ways to improve the system, and it sounds like there's a million variables that go into this.
There are, for sure. And as patients, you have to empower yourselves as well. I mean, I'm always talking to all my friends and family, make sure if you go into the hospital and if you have an implant, please know your UDI, know what's being implanted, because you never know if that's going to be recalled. Stay informed, communicate with your doctor.
Okay. I think, there's just one other point I wanted to cover off about the future of healthcare, and that is, I was listening to another podcast. I'm a fan of a scientist named Brett Weinstein, who talks about evolutionary biology, and one of his comments, I guess, I'm not sure if he was trying to be funny, but it was kind of funny. He was talking about, people talk about, advances in technology and around the human body, and, how maybe we'll get to, hey, people can just live longer and longer and infinitely longer. You could live 1,000 years. And his take was, really, like, what are you doing that's so important? Are you inventing the longer lasting light bulb? Like, most people kind of, they kind of squander the time that they have. But let's say we do have, longer lives for however long that is. But, in terms of quality of life,
yes.
I think, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of, what's achievable in the future with a top-notch healthcare system?
The sky's the limit, really. I mean, you can live a long life, but and it all goes to taking care of yourself, too, right? So to keep yourself out of the hospital, so you don't have to go in for any replacements, and being safe. We need to look out for one another too.
Right. Well, on that note, I've had a wonderful time in this conversation. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk with me about the future of healthcare. Joan Melendez from Xcelrate UDI, how would someone find out more about you and the company?
Please visit our website at Xcelrate UDI. It's Xcelrate.com.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Joan. And
thank you so much.
You have a great afternoon.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for your time.